Right, y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. Okay, so today we're doing another gear review. Today we're checking out the Mira Safety C21. So previously we've checked out their CM7M mask, which I have right here. And I can say for sure that the upgrades that the C21 has over the CM7M makes it much more competitive compared to other masks on the market. So if you guys don't know, I reviewed a lot of masks, or I've also used a lot of gas masks. So I have a couple of other ones right here. So we have the old JP5. I mean, this is basically what you don't want to use for a gas mask. I mean, you know, it might save you potentially, you know, if you can even get it on your head, but it's not competitive by any means. So this is the M50. By far the most usage I've had in any mask was the M50. I also have the C50, which is like kind of the civilian equivalent. Very similar, pretty much exactly the same. However, that one takes 40 millimeter filters, just like the C21 does. So as far as comparison, most of the comparison I'm going to be doing is going to be with the C50 and M50. And again, we'll kind of compare it with the old CM7M as well. So with that being said, I have used gas mask pretty extensively. I mean, I wasn't like a CBurn expert. However, I've used them in the conventional infantry, in the Marines and Army. I've used it in a CQB environment. I've used it in subterranean environments, kind of like tunnel clearing. I've used it as part of like a nuclear reaction security team. I've used it even in the recon platoon. And even now as counterintelligence, you know, I've used it for the gas chamber. I don't need to use it nearly as much. However, when I do go to the range, I do like using it. If you guys saw like my YouTube logo, I have a mask in it just because it just looks really mean, especially when you're talking about like the dark outskirts like this. It's pretty intimidating. So it's kind of like a cool aesthetic, and that's why I kind of adopted it in the logo. But yeah, I've used gas mask a lot, so I'm very familiar with them. So that's kind of what experience I'm going to be working with as far as talking about this. So I'll go over the mask itself. I kind of go over my first impressions, and then I'll talk about how it compares to other masks that I've used. And then I'll talk about just my experience at the range, kind of using it. Also using this with like a little OC canister, like a little OC fog grenade. And that was kind of like the only real testing that I did, which is, you know, better than I think I did with the CM7M, which is kind of just OC spray.
All right, so we have this Fox OC fog grenade, and we're going to try this out. So this has 2% OC, which is pretty nasty stuff. I can feel it on the hands. All right, so I just broke the seal. And I can tell it's on my clothing now. And I was feeling it burning pretty significantly on my hand. Luckily, most of it got carried that way, but I'm still getting kind of like that residual on the gear itself. And yeah, it's not too pleasant. So it's kind of just like an itchy feeling in my throat, which is kind of what I expected. I've done like OC and CS before, so it's kind of just what, yeah, it's what I'm used to feeling, is that itchy feeling and kind of like that sunburn feeling on the exposed skin. But ooh, I want to see if I can kind of smell it on the mask itself. Okay, yeah, I got like one little pocket there. I mean, yeah, so it works. Honestly, I had like a little tinge at first where I was like, do I have a proper seal? So you kind of saw I was tugging there. And yeah, I did need to tighten this strap a little bit more, and then I was good. But yeah, I mean, it works as you would expect with all the testing and stuff that it's been through to go into production and to be sold. There's probably going to be a decent amount of testing
So as far as like the overall mask, it's a solid mask. We have the bromobutyl rubber, which I think pretty sure the CM7M used the exact same rubber. And the nice thing about that rubber is it's very, very tough. Like you don't need to worry about like this thing accidentally hitting a branch or something and getting punctured. So the rubber itself, very high quality, very tough, nothing to worry about, works very fine. Like the C50 and M50, I think those are made of like a chlorobutyl, which the only real differences that I've been able to kind of ascertain is, I mean, overall the feel, the bromobutyl feel is a little bit thicker, kind of more unflexing, but that might just be how much, you know, they wanted to actually use. And a few other differences with like temperature rating, but this mask itself is rated from like -40 degrees centigrade to 70 degrees centigrade, which if you're operating in any of those environments, some of y'all might be operating in that -40 degrees centigrade at some point, which if you are, then the mask, you know, it's gonna hold up fine. But if you're in that 70 degrees centigrade, yikes. Yeah, I'd be heat catting in this thing right away, which if you guys don't know, yeah, I'd be passing out. I'd be getting very, very hot. This thing would be filled up with sweat almost immediately, and I'd probably drown in the sweat. So that wouldn't be fun either. I think I'd rather take my chances with a nerve agent, to be honest. But you can get the mask itself for about $500. So compared to like the C50 and M50, pretty comparable as far as those prices. I think I got a used M50 for about that much with like the filter and stuff. So yeah, as far as like the competitors, you might be able to get some deals. I know like this had like $100 off during Black Friday. As far as Avon, I know that they're under Team Wendy now, so they probably have some deals as well. But as far as the price, it's pretty competitive with the other mask on the market. Now, as far as first impressions, the mask itself, again, it feels very high quality. It feels very much like the other mask that I've used as far as like the actual materials that are being used. So the materials, no issue with that. With the 6-point harness, it all feels very high quality. It seems like it's gonna last a pretty long time. Very abrasion resistant as well. Again, that rubber is solid. You have the outserts, which compared to the CM7M, that wasn't a possibility. And because you have this one kind of panoramic visor, the field of view is probably the best that I've had with any mask that I've used. The field of view on the C21 is fantastic. And again, because you can use those outserts, you can see here I have the dark outsert on, which I think just looks a little more intimidating. Obviously, if you're going to be in like indoors or in a dark environment, then yeah, just it's not worth it to go for the aesthetics, you know, if you can actually see better. Did you go to the Korean market already? What'd you get? Anything? Yeah.
Okay. Have you eaten lunch?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get all the farmers on myself then.
Okay, have fun.
Disrespectful.
Now I will say, compared to other masks, this thing just it was standing out or sticking out a lot more than say like, so here we have the M50. I mean, you can see, again, it's a gas mask. It's going to stick out to leave room for your nose and your mouth so you're not getting like super claustrophobic. But the C21 looked like it's stuck out, or at least like drooped a little bit more, if that makes sense. So I'll try and put these side by side. So yeah, it just looked like it drooped a little bit lower compared to the other masks. So I was worried that it would be a little bit too kind of like bottom heavy, or like just be too difficult to work with like body armor or something. However, the truth of the matter is, when you're using gas masks, even like something like this, the M50, which is like the US military golden standard, it's what we use in the Marine Corps and the Army. Like even when you have something like this, looking down is like basically impossible. You can look down about like this much. So anything that's like here is pretty much inaccessible. So if you have one of those flip down phones, unless like the case can actually slide out, which I've only seen like once, those things are basically like impossible to use. So even just doing anything like admin, map checks, anything is a pain in the butt when you're trying to look down in a gas mask. So with this, it's really no different. I would say it definitely does protrude a little bit more, something that I've noticed. However, it does feel pretty nice. Like having worn this for maybe 2 hours now, you know, when I was at the range and otherwise kind of just testing it around the house, trying to like literally just keep it on my face to see how it felt, what was annoying, how it was to breathe, and how it was to do certain things. I was able to get a good impression with all of that, doing that. Now I will say I did kind of feel that drag a little bit, kind of like, you know, all this weight down here, especially with this big 40 millimeter kind of like filter. You know, Avon has like their proprietary filters for the M50, which, you know, it is what it is. I kind of like the 40mm filters just because there's an abundance of these. They're very easy to screw in. Again, they're pretty cheap. With Avon, they're pretty easy to put on. They're actually very quick to put on if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, I've seen a lot of people just freak out trying to like replace their filter, especially when it's on their face, but even when it's like not on their face. So it really, you know, whatever filter you have, whatever kind of adapter it actually takes, or whatever mount, it really just takes like practice. And with these 40mm filters, there's no issue. Again, that's the NATO standard. So you can get a bunch of different filters, even like the old JP5 mask use the same kind of filter setup. Now moving more into kind of like comparing these two. So again, these are kind of like this is like the golden standard. So this is kind of what I'm going to compare it to. And again, this is what I have the most experience with. Now you can kind of see here, the M50 is a lot flatter, kind of like in the front, than the C21. And because of that, I've noticed that the field of view just seems so much better on the C21, just because you have kind of like that wraparound view, as opposed to this where it's kind of, you know, your perspective is a little bit cut off. And as far as the overall comfort, it's pretty hard to kind of compare it. Again, I have used the M50 significantly more. I've used this for hours, days at this point, just wearing this and the C50. So I know kind of, and I'm very used to this and how this kind of feels and fits on my face. Now with both of these, they come in 3 sizes. So depending on, you know, how big your head is, you can get different sizes for that. Compared to the old CM7M, this is definitely more comfortable. It just feels like it fits my face a little bit better. Feels like it's easier to actually get that seal. I feel like there's just less rubber in general, kind of like around my face. And again, just having like this much space in the front makes me feel a little bit less claustrophobic. And again, having kind of like this wraparound panoramic lens or visor makes it a lot less claustrophobic as well, just because you can kind of see better and your field of view isn't so limited and whatnot. So again, you do have those different options. It's kind of like the standard with gas masks is usually there's only like a few kind of sizes, and then the harness kind of does the rest. So this has a 6-point harness compared to the old CM7M, which I think had like a 5-point harness. So again, these are very similar. I will say with this, you kind of have a little bit of a I guess basically like a nylon bar right across. So whenever you're actually staging the harness itself, this is pretty much what you'll see everybody do. So inside the carrier, you basically take that harness and you'll fold it in the front. So if you need to pull it out, you can throw it on your face, get a seal, pretty much like just holding it to your face, and then you can reach across, grab that, and then pull the harness to the back of your head. But I did find this is a little bit harder just to find in general, but also to kind of like pull to the back of my head compared to the harness on the Avon mask. You can see here, it's got this protruding loop here. It just feels a little bit easier to kind of take this and pull it over my face. And I think that's just with like I guess just like the way that I don't know how it's mounted to the actual rubber. For whatever reason, it feels like there's just a little bit more resistance with this mask. And I think that's just because I haven't broken it in as much as this. So eventually, you know, it will be easy for it to just flip over like that to get to the back of my head and get, you know, a real proper seal as opposed to just kind of holding it to my face. So as far as donning and doffing these things, it's pretty easy. The military standard is like 9 seconds. So to get that with the M50, C50, very easy. And with this, I was able to get, you know, out of my carrier on my face in about 5-6 seconds, you know, kind of moving the fastest. And that's kind of just holding it to my face, pulling the harness down, and then tightening the 2 bottom straps. So the nice thing about the 6-point harness is you have these 2 straps on the top, these upper straps on the side. Now these will basically be adjusted, and the first time you adjust them, or whenever you like get a good seal, you basically leave those. The only straps that get loosened whenever you're taking the mask off and putting it on to tighten them is these 2 bottom straps. So these are the only like kind of temporary ones, if that makes sense. Once these are set, you leave them in place, and then you only mess with the bottom ones because you don't want to basically throw your harness on or your mask on and then have 6 straps to worry about. You basically just adjust those, and then you can just pull the 2 bottom. So very similar. well, pretty much exactly the same as the M50 setup, where you're only adjusting those bottom straps. So I really kind of appreciate how there's less things to mess with whenever you do throw it on your head. Now with the M50, kind of like with the C50, you could have a cap on one side and then you can move the filter to the other side. So the M50, you can have 2 filters on both sides, or you can just rock 1 filter and then it'll kind of auto seal, which is really nice. So let's see if you can kind of see it here. So you see this white part right here. So this basically creates a seal. So if you need to change your filters out, so the filters generally are only good for about 24 hours if you're in a CBurn environment or a contaminated environment. So you change those out. So while this is on your face, what I can do is I can just take my filter off. These proprietary filters always get a little bit stuck. So all I need to do is take the filter off and then it would automatically seal. Obviously I wouldn't really be able to breathe at this point, but then I can get my new filter, slap it on, and then I'm good to go. So that's nice to have that auto seal option. With the C21, you can move the filter from one side to the other. However, it doesn't actually have that auto seal function built in. Apparently that is going to be an option. So that's something that you can at least get, which would be nice if you do need to do kind of like the filter change. However, I'm not exactly sure. I think once you're in a contaminated environment, if you don't have that auto seal option, you do run the risk of taking in some particulates. Of course, there's ways to kind of mitigate that to the best of your ability. But again, it is nice to have that auto seal option. So whenever you are in a CBurn environment, you can do those filter changes. But again, it is nice to kind of have the option to take this and move it onto the other side if you need to. I'm a right-handed shooter, so obviously my filter is going to be on my left side, so it's not getting in the way of my rifle when I'm trying to shoulder it. Now, there's not that many like differences. With this mask, you can get the kind of voice modulator, basically like the attachments, I forgot what you call them, basically like an amplifier. So you can basically get an attachment that goes on the front so you can kind of hear people speak a little bit more clearly. I would say you can still hear pretty well. When you wear a gas mask in general, you kind of end up talking very deliberately, like a little bit slower, a little bit more pronounced, and generally just louder. So you can kind of work around it. If you have comm setups, it's very hard to kind of use that, without having the proper equipment. But again, those voice amplifiers is definitely a nice option to have. If you can throw that on the front, you can communicate significantly better than just trying to yell. Both of these do have drinking tubes. Now you can see with the M50, I have this latch here. So basically if I flip that up and down, that rotates the drinking tube. So you can kind of, I'll show it a little bit here. That rotates the drinking tube. So when you're not using it, it kind of goes out of the way. So you can see there. So when you're not using it, you can flip it down and it's not kind of touching your mouth. However, with the C21, it doesn't have that option. With the CM7M, it also had that on the front. So you had this ability to kind of rotate this, and that's also turned the drinking tube so it was kind of out of your way. However, the C21 doesn't have that, which kind of sucks because that was like my biggest gripe just using this, especially for a longer period of time, is I was feeling this drinking tube touching my mouth pretty much like the whole time. So you can kind of see here, it's this gray drinking tube right there, and it just chills there. So it's kind of touching your mouth. You kind of end up, I guess, ignoring it. But again, like the second you put it on, I'm feeling it like touching my mouth. As I was like trying to breathe or like just talk, I was noticing, my mouth was hitting the drinking tube, which is again, just kind of an annoyance. And when you're in a CBurn environment, everything in general is going to be annoying. So you want as few things as possible annoying you. So you just have whatever sanity you can hold on to. So that kind of sucks that that's not kind of an option with this to kind of tuck that away. But just something I noticed, it does still have a drinking tube, which is nice. So all you need to do is you get your canteen with a special canteen cap, and then you would just pull the drinking tube out, attach it, and then you can drink, which is a nice thing to, it's not just a nice thing, it's a necessity to have that, because if you can't take in water, through your mask, then you're not gonna last very long because you sweat a lot when you're wearing a gas mask. pools, it gets super gross. And that's another thing that I've noticed. So, okay, hold on. Let me put this plug back in. Okay, this I actually didn't notice until now. So there's a little rubber seal that goes on the other side of the drinking tube. So you can kind of see. So a little rubber seal that goes right here. Kind of a pain in the butt to put back in, which I don't know if that's open, if it compromises the seal. Okay, there we go. I don't know if that's open. If, you know, when that's open, it compromises the seal. But yeah, definitely a concern. But that is something to note. You can switch the drinking tube around to the other side if you do have the filter on the other side. So it is a nice thought to have that. You know, with the M50, it's kind of mitigated. It just kind of goes on around the front there, but it is something to keep in mind. But I don't know if that's going to compromise the seal if this little rubber piece is gone, to be honest. Something to think about, I guess. What was I talking about? Oh, sweat. So with the M50 here, you can see right where the chin is, there's a little hole right here, which is nice because the sweat all comes down your face, basically ends up on your chin, and you feel like a pool of sweat basically right where your chin is. It's a lot of fun. But however, when you have that hole, it's a little bit nicer because a lot of that sweat will just kind of come to the bottom of the mask. Really gross to just have like a pool of sweat sloshing around. It's yeah, seabird environment, not a fun time. Even just training, obviously not a fun time wearing these things. However, the C21 doesn't have that little drain hole where the chin is, so I did notice a lot more sweat kind of pooling around my chin. Most of it did end up still going to like the bottom of the mask, like here, but I was noticing that. There is a potential if you have that much sweat around your face for the mask to shift, you know, if you do hit it or something. And, you know, if you hit it and it's wet and it slides up, you have the potential of losing that seal. Not going to be a fun time. So just something to consider. I mean, you could honestly just drill a hole there. I mean, it's on the inside. It's not necessarily responsible for the seal. However, this was kind of tested as is. So drilling something might be a little bit sketchy, you know, if for whatever reason you do lose the seal because of that new hole kind of in the chin area. But yeah, take it how you want. You can kind of test it, I guess, yourself. If you have like some OC spray or CS, you can kind of test it yourself before you're in, you know, potentially like a nerve agent contaminated environment. But yeah, something to consider as far as like the sweat and just general comfort of the mask. And when you're talking about the general kind of like rating, it exceeds any military standards. So the mask itself, very, very safe when you're talking about working against contaminants. You do have the ballistic polycarbonate visor or kind of outsert, which is nice. Obviously, you don't have to worry about you know, a rock or something hitting your visor and potentially, you know, opening that up and basically letting those contaminants in through the visor. So having that outsert is great. Being able to change out the visor outserts for, you know, like dark versus clear versus like mirrored or something is also a nice kind of option. There's also ones that prevent against like lasers, if that's a consideration. So having that ability to change that out is awesome. And of course, that being ballistic is great. I did notice that whenever I have this on, as I'm looking through the mask, let's see if I can kind of simulate this. On the bottom and top there, you can kind of see it's a little bit clearer towards the bottom and a little bit clearer towards the top. So I've just noticed that it's not necessarily like clear or dark all the way around. Really not like a huge consideration. It's just kind of something that I notice every now and again in my peripheral vision. But pretty easy fix, I would imagine, just to kind of make that maybe like a little bit bigger or something. Or I don't know, if you want to just like take a Sharpie and darken the edges of the actual visor, you can do that as well. But yeah, as far as the protection, this thing it's gonna take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything like that. And if you are someone who wears glasses, then you don't need to worry about that because you can actually get those prescription inserts and basically put it inside the mask. Because just having your prescription eyeglasses and putting the mask on, one, could potentially compromise your seal if you have those glasses kind of pushing against the mask. And two, it's just super uncomfortable and your eyeglasses tend to fog up even like more than the prescription inserts. So you basically have double layer of fog. This actually didn't fog out very well at all. Most masks really shouldn't if it has a proper seal, but yeah, it is nice to reduce the fog if you can. So again, that's definitely a competitive feature. You know, when you're talking about gas mask, it's nice to be able to have that prescription insert. Again, you don't want your clear vision basically potentially shifting around. You want it to be as fixed as the gas mask is to your face. So they're not kind of like moving independently, and just, again, another factor that would just annoy you in that kind of environment. Now, as far as using this at the range, kind of using with a bunch of different weapons, I've used it with some sub guns. I've used it with my AR, also my shotgun. I don't think I got any footage of that. I've used it with a few different firearms. No issue at all. I think of all the masks that I've had, shouldering a weapon and getting a good like cheek weld was the best with the C21. It was just very, very natural, very easy. I was basically facing no resistance at all. The only exception is with my M16 with my ACOG. That was essentially impossible, which if you're talking about it's like a magnified optic with a certain eye relief and whatnot, and even just depending on how high the actual mount is, it can be a pain in the butt. It's going to be a pain in the butt, if not impossible, with a lot of different weapons. I will say the ACOG seemed to work a little bit better with the M50, but you kind of just have to think about your particular setup and see if it might work with this mask. Of course, there's not that many places you can go and try on the mask. However, you do have the ability to kind of return it, or kind of just finagle with your actual rifle setup if you want to do that. But as far as all the red dots that I've used, the EOTechs, the standard red dots, even like LPVO, I didn't have any issues with the actual C21. But again, it's going to be dependent on the weapon that you're using, but also the kind of mount that you're using as well, and just, again, the optic. So things to consider, but I did use it a lot, and for the most part, it was easily the most comfortable and easy to actually, you know, present my weapon and get my sight on target without kind of fighting the gas mask, which, again, you don't want your gear kind of fighting you when you're trying to do something like that. And overall, when I was using it at the range, it was very comfortable. Like, I wasn't really feeling the weight of it too much. It worked very well with my helmet setup, so no issues there. It worked well with my Peltors. Yeah, it felt comfortable. It didn't feel too hot. It never fogged up. Again, if you have a proper seal, you shouldn't really be getting any fog anyway, but it never fogged up, which is, you know, it's a nice thing. If you get a little bit hotter, you might start getting a little bit of fog potentially. However, it was like 40 degrees or something when I was shooting, so it was pretty cold, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was pretty cold. Didn't have any issue with like my body heat kind of fighting against the fog, but never had that. Never had any difficulties breathing. Sometimes if you do something too strenuous in a gas mask, you start to like freak out a little bit because you're like trying to get oxygen and you're not getting it as fast as you need it. So yeah, that can be a little bit scary, but I didn't have any issues with that. I also wasn't really doing a whole lot, just some kind of like sprinting here and there. And it was short distances, so I wasn't really getting physically fatigued or kind of like oxygen deprived at all when I was out there. So yeah, no issues with that. Honestly, it was a very comfortable mask to use at the range, and even with like the dark outsert, it wasn't particularly sunny that day. However, it had, again, just a great field of view, just how it wraps around your face like that. Yeah, it worked super well, which is definitely a nice thing when you're talking about having a mask, because having a mask, like the CM7M was significantly more restricted as far as that field of view. So just like doing things, manipulating your weapons, anything like that, you're kind of fighting the mask to kind of do any of that, and obviously you want to reduce that as much as possible. Honestly, and that's basically it. Again, it is what it is. It's a gas mask. It is going to stack up very well with the competitors out there. I kind of talked about the small gripes here and there. I talked about the comfort as well, and also, again, just the incredible field of view with this particular mask. So I think it is like leagues better above the CM7M. At least the CM7M was great, comfortable, great price as well. But as far as stacking up with the competitors, this is definitely something. It's definitely a step in the right direction for Mira Safety, because yeah, this definitely stacks up with the other mask out there. And yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cool. I mean, it's always nice as a YouTuber to kind of have that cool factor when you're doing videos, just because it, you know, if it looks cool, you can kind of get more views out of it. So that's kind of just my selfish perspective. But yeah, it's a great mask. It's got some solid features, again, comparable to the other mask out there. And again, a pretty comparable price. So when you're talking about those sales and stuff, again, I did see those sales for like Black Friday and whatnot. So they are out there. You can get a pretty good deal on this mask. And there's going to be some pretty nice accessories coming for it. If not, you know, nice accessories already out there. And again, that compatibility with the filters is always a nice thing to have. Just so if you want, you can kind of stock up on those depending on the shelf life of the filter itself. It's nice to have that option as well. But if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. I can try it with particular weapons or optics to kind of see how it might be fighting against the mask, or the mask might be fighting the optic. So I can try that if you guys have any questions with that, or if you have any questions in general, maybe how it compares to other masks, or how it kind of just stands on, on its own, as far as like, again, fogging or certain things. If you want me to test certain things, just let me know, put it down in the comment section, and I'll try and facilitate as best as possible. But yeah, hopefully you guys appreciated the review. Definitely let me know what you guys think. I will always be doing some gear reviews. I actually have a plate carrier review coming up very soon, so definitely stay tuned for that. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm here, I'm doing these videos so I can try and help y'all. If you guys are on the fence, thinking about buying it, it's a great mask. You're not gonna be disappointed. And again, it stacks up with the other mask out there. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. That is it for this one. I'll see you all in the next one.